sought out a name, but it was really about where we're from. And it's a unique part of the US and a unique part of the region. And I think, you know, it has its pros and cons, but we love it, and yeah, we're here. So I think the work reflects place in many levels, and part of that is maybe this space and time thing.
Yeah, and it's very contrasting for me to think about the US being and knowing that always they talk about time as money. And in this case, I see how an architecture studio can be based in a sort of a space where time is considered differently, but the economy and everything in the US works the same way everywhere. So to find that concept, because at the end when you're doing a project, it has to be built, so it has all these technical aspects that needs to be solving economical problems and being saying that time is money. So how do you manage that, like being, because the way you're approaching is more like an artist, that you have time to do things and you don't care about the money and all that, but you're doing great projects and you're making it happen. How do you do that?
I think we're learning how to be, we're learning the business side, definitely still learning that. And I think when we started this, we were more, at least in my mind, more ideal in what you say is the sort of artistic pursuit. But the reality is we have to run a studio and a practice, and it's a balance. It's finding how do we actually educate our clients that the investigations and the discoveries we're doing require a certain amount of time. And because both Cade and I are also builders, control the financial of any of the projects we're building. So that gives us the sort of control of that elusive time is money. And in controlling that, we get to play with where we speed up, where we find efficiencies, and where the process is necessary for us to actually slow down, put on the brakes, and investigate material, crafts, light, memory, all these other things that we try to pursue. So it's definitely a balance.
So you do, how do you work? How do you do your process, the construction process? Do you have employees, or you have general contractors, or how the project from the design to
we are
product? How does it work?
We're typically the general contractor, and for certain trades, say mechanical, electrical, plumbing. Outside of that, we connected ourselves in Tucson with a group of artisans and craftsmen that we bring in as either subcontractors or most of the time as employees. And through that, we're able to have these conversations on site that continue to evolve the process, the design. I think time and money during construction is always a part of the conversation.
Yes.
Always. It's a factor, but sometimes we speed up to slow down. I think it's the best way I could put it. And so our craftsmen that we bring along are really good and really fast, and they can be. Sometimes things that we design are a little more challenging, so there's some lead time or thought time or design further figuring out how to approach it, but we actually find poetry in the pragmatism. So a lot of designs, we think about utilization of the material. How many cuts are we going to make? How many screws is it going to take? How many times do I have to change a tool? And so those things get into the conversation as it evolves from design into actually realizing it.
And in how, and I see that you design, you get into lots of detail, like from handles to the furniture, lots of things. How do you separate that or how do you work that out with the client? Do you, when you give them a proposal, you separate that out, or because I suppose every client is different. So how do you make that happen?
If we were good businessmen, we would separate it out.
What?
If we were good businessmen, we would separate it out.
Okay, we don't. Yeah, that's the
It, you know,
in the beginning, we had fewer projects, and they were all local. Also, just to add a layer to where we are now. In the last year and a half, most of our work has been out of town. Mostly the southwest region of the United States, and then a project in Aruba. And so we have different levels of out of town projects. You know, we are working in a traditional sense where we're finding contractors. And I'd say in those projects, it's harder to do the custom handle work, or, you know, you got to add another time frame for those kind of details. And so I think on the local end, we have our shop here and we can make things. And it depends on timing, I guess, you know, not to come back around to the boat, but it's.
Yeah. Yeah, on your website it says it's an alliance of architects, craftspeople, artists, designers, and builders with practices rooted in the master builder tradition.
Yeah.
Talk about master builder.
Yeah.
You have projects right now in Galisteo, New Mexico, Joshua Tree, Utah, Sedona, Arizona, Tucson, Maui, and Aruba. So how the master builder is gonna make that happen? That's the question.
On some of them, we're trying to figure out how to move crew, craftsmen. On other ones, we're looking at teaming up with local builders that are more, I'd say, less the idea of a general contractor and someone who's just a builder, someone who understands craft, understands design, who's going to be part of our team to help us realize the project. And you know, there's different levels of that person or that team. Mm-hmm. But so far, it's been successful. We haven't right now. We have one in Texas that is getting built that way, where we aligned ourselves with a builder there who is a general contractor, but I think we removed that term. He's more. There's more conversation happening than RFIs and
that's cool, because then you can start implementing new building techniques or new craftsmanship that is not local from your area.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And we try to pull on the local talent wherever we are, you know, as much as we can. So that's always good, you know. People like to work with people they know, so, you know.
Cool. So do you have anything to show us? Any projects that we can see?
Yeah. Let me share the screen.
Okay.
Can you guys see it?
Yes, pretty well.
All right. So I think, as I was mentioning before, a lot of me personally, but I think a lot of the conversations in the studio, the place that this is to be in. And in many ways, as of recently, a lot of they are looking for what do you call it? Like a place of respite, a place of refuge within the landscape. So removing themselves from civilization to a degree and engaging the landscape and nature. This project here, this is an image of a site that we've been working on in Joshua Tree, just south of town near the entrance to the park. And it butts up against the Mojave Land Trust, which basically in the future will become part of Joshua Tree.
Mhm.
And so these were looking at more little teasers, I think.
Yeah, just kind of what's going on right now with us.
So this would be the approach to the house. It's about probably about 13 or 14 acres. Butts up to that mountain range there. And then this one, when we were looking at, the owner was wanting thermal mass. And in California, what we're finding, all the builders are equipped to do frame. And so anything outside of that sort of ordinary is posing some challenges. It's not completely out of the ordinary, but a lot of the builders in this region are just used to frame. If we had to find some of the older craftsmen and builders that had been coming down that learned or still practiced masonry.
And in this case, in Joshua Tree, there's been a building boom. And if you guys tuned in yesterday, you know, you probably heard Jeff mention sort of the economy in San Diego, about the abundance of building work and how hard it was to get pricing and Joshua Tree, I would say our project has been, we talked to probably 11 contractors. And I would say 7 of them told us, I'm busy for a year and a half. So there's that layer to these projects. You know, it's a popular area. Just the conversation that you brought us into and how this sort of COVID thing is affecting all of us. This project has been put on hold right now until further notice because of the virus. So that's something I would say probably most architecture firms are dealing with at this point to some capacity.
Place that landscape that we're working in is northern New Mexico. And I think this one's a fond place for us. This is looking at the Sangre de Cristos just outside of Santa Fe. And so the property is south of Santa Fe in the Galisteo Basin Preserve. It's a community that was developed with land conservation and easements in mind. So minimal building envelopes, water conservation, viewshed conservation, stuff like, you know, looking to build a community that is more sustainable.
Above average standards on, you know, energy efficiency, etc.
Right. So the minimums you need to require for like Title 24 or code standards, the jurisdiction here requires you to be 30% better than. So an R19 wall needs to be R24, an R38 roof needs to be like R44, and then you adjust those as part of the environmental study. The materials we're pursuing on this one are similar to Casa Caldera, which we'll show later. It's a mixture of lava rock and cement. And northern Arizona is, its geology and history is rich with volcanic material. And a lot of the mountains in the area are actually being mined for what we call scoria, red and black lava rock. And in New Mexico, the really only use they're using that for is 1, cinder block, and 2, they actually use it to de-ice the roads during winter. So we're looking to connect with one of the mines there and secure probably about 200 tons of material. And this one was supposed to start construction next week. But this one is also on June, but until further notice.
And this is one of the projects that we mentioned. We are looking to move our crew, some of our crew there, to build the foundations and walls, and then we'll pull back and use a local trade force of artists and craftsmen that we've met, doing another remodel nearby in the actual town of Galisteo, or the village, I guess. So, when we talk about time, this project started 2.5 years ago. For various reasons and adjustments, construction was due to start now, but we just got to roll with more time. So
that time piece is going to be recurring in a lot of the work we're showing, especially when we get to Casa Caldera. We joke around that makes it better, like simmering a stew or marinating a meat. The more time it has, the better it tastes, or the better it'll. And for the most part, we've found that to be true. Time has passed, and we're able to maybe let go of some of these things that we wanted to see and weren't going, or found new ways and perspectives to look at it, and try to find ways. And so this one has benefited from the time that it's taken.
And this is a project that's actually closing in on construction, on completion, and it's in Marfa, Texas. And for lack of a better description, we'd say it's a detached guest suite to an existing home. And what you're looking at is the view towards the every day. They watch the sunset in reverse. They watch the shadow move across the grassy horizon and cover that mountain, which the locals call Haystack, but I think it's technically called Twin Mountain or Twin Peak or something. And so this project started in 2016, and it's 1,300 square feet. So 12 meters by 12 meters, something like that. And just some process shots of the project. And again, we had to find local builders. The brick was made in Tucson by a local brick maker. These are compressed earth blocks, and we've been working with the contractor who's from Mexico but grew up in Chicago, and has a crew. And most of his crew had only built with CMU, concrete masonry units, and so some of them, this was their first time to work with sort of a compressed earth block. And when they were done, they were really, really pleased with the work they did. They did a really great job. So they're continuing to work on it, but the land out here in Marfa and sort of the building economy has been so busy. It's a very small town of about, I want to say 7,000 people, give or take, maybe more now. But there's also, it's near the Permian Basin, which is until recently booming with oil, and finding people that can do the work is challenging because everyone is spread thin and busy. There's a lack of skilled labor, and so the ones that are busy are super busy. And so we basically just had to roll with this time frame that's loose. No one will give you a fixed price, and you just got to roll with it. So, we started foundations in 2017, and we're still not finished.
Wow.
So, and it's turning out really well, but it's, just one of those things that we changed our contract, we roll with it. Now it's hourly. We're doing our best. We go out there and we can.
I think in all of these here, that to say that the clients are still happy, and they're sort of joined us on this journey of this very slow pace. The ones in Marfa, they actually live on the property, live in Marfa, so they completely understand this West Texas now drawn out pace that these projects take. I remember trying to coordinate concrete just to get a price and a time frame, and they were quoting me truck on site because we were competing with the oil fields.
Wow.
That time frame ends up, you know, we're not the only ones dictating it. I think there's other economies and other factors, natural or part of the industry that affect it.
Yeah, of course.
So we got some windows and doors in, and we got the ceiling in, and they're wrapping up, and you know the casework's coming in.
Do we know when we'll be done?
I'm gonna say summertime. It's still moving forward, but we'll see.
Okay.
So those are kind of things that we had on the boards and that we've been thinking about the last couple of years. And what we're going to share now is a project that was completed some time ago, 5 years ago, 2015, and it's Casa Caldera. And I think some of the thinking that went behind this would be probably good for conversation after. So it's located in a remote part of southern Arizona, probably about 10 miles north of the Mexico border with Sonora.
With Nogales?
Yeah, Nogales is to the southwest of here, probably by an hour and a half, but the site is about 80 miles from Tucson, but it takes 2 hours. So again, part of that slowness. Here's the shot of the actual international border in that region. So this region is the start of the Santa Cruz River, which then feeds Tucson. The river goes south into Mexico, comes north into Tucson. This is what it's going to look like soon.
Wow.
This was Cade and I were playing with these ideas about how to live remote, off-grid in a, you know, it's only 945 square feet. 250 of that square feet is outdoor space in the Zagwan. And a lot of this was bringing up sort of ideas of how do you build something sustainably in a remote region? And for us, we just realized that we were the umbilical cord, bringing resources, materials, calories, energy, leveraging civilization to actually build this thing that eventually can sustain itself. So there's solar power. There's where the owner got there, he had grapes in the ground, so there's a vineyard and there's irrigation. He's got about 40 acres. The nearest neighbor is about a mile away. Well water and natural gas for cooking, but heating is with wood only, and there is no air conditioning in this. So that was part of the big driver of this.
You can see there's a theme that a lot of our clients already like to social distance themselves. So, yeah.
On the site plan, you can kind of see, it's like, where's Waldo? You can see my mouse. There's Casa Caldera. It's located on this hillside outside of a floodplain here. And so in good rain events, the water's flowing down here in the valley. We aren't permitted to build there, so we had to find a spot on the hillside to get in. And part of that siting was, how do we get some views? But the owner was also concerned with how to not be seen. There's a forest road that moves to the south here. And you'll have hunters, border patrol, migrants moving through this landscape at the night. So we didn't want specifically to be noted. Plan simple. It's 3 zones, living zone with a kitchen. It's about 255 square feet. There's a bedroom floor. We split this with another 250 square foot Zagwan. And so this becomes sort of the heart of the project for ventilation, for experience, for views, for solar gain, but also for shade
And protection.
and protection. I think a lot of our conversations, a lot of what we do is really based around these conversations and thinking about the experience. I know Cade and I labored, but what probably seemed like months about the actual program of that 205 square feet. I think it came down to in the winter, in the sunrise, it's pretty cold there. We're at like 5,000 feet above sea level. Talk experience as well. It's cold, you wake up, I'm gonna start a fire, and I'm gonna go make coffee. And so greeting the sun in that morning at that time of year was an important part of the orientation experience of it. We also built this project, and because it's remote, we figured out how to live on site while building this project. So this is Cade and I social in 2015.
We'd go out there for 4 days and build, and then come home Friday,
Come home on Thursday night.
and then get back out there on Monday. And so for 3 or 4 months, that was constant, and then we started pacing it out. And again, such a small project, but it took, that really had to do with the client, who is a great client, but he lived in Argentina. He had a vineyard down there, and then he moved to Uruguay. All the while, he was also taking classes of repairing old non-battery watches, and so his communication was very limited. And he would respond to emails maybe every 2 weeks, every month. He'd show up for a visit and then leave after 15 minutes. And so we just learned how to roll with his pace, and sort of take the brakes off, or put the brakes on and take the gas pedal off, and just go with the flow.
Just an amazing thing. The guy is repairing broken watches that are mechanical, and yet we have this really expanded sense of time that it takes. What should have taken us 5 months to build took us 2 years. And so this specific project is also where a lot of that love gets put in it. When you have that much time, when you're driving 2 hours to the site, you're thinking about how am I going to park my truck? What am I going to take out that truck? What are the things I'm going to work on? So there's this visualization exercise, as well as also thinking about moments and lifestyle and how it's going to be lived in. And because we were living on site, it also gave us this intimate relationship with the land, the views, the climate. So a lot of those things played into it. This is what breakfast for 3 normally looked like. And we started building this one in winter, and I'd say mostly unprepared. And I think we had a ration of eggs for a week, and it was so cold that our body craved calories, protein, and coffee. And so every morning we would probably spend 2 hours by the fire and making breakfast and consuming a lot of calories. Part of the need to come back home on Friday, get more construction material, get more food rations, get more beer. So it became this sort of rhythm of collecting rations and moving out, consuming those rations and going back. So this is an image of what that material looks like that I mentioned earlier. This is the red story. It's basically polarized lava rock. And so you mix that with cement and water, and you get this mixture. And this guy here, Paul, is the inventor or the executor of this material. And he built this machine that he designed. You put cement on this side, the scoria sand on this side, comes out the mix, it gets hit with water, it mixes in this auger and comes up on this treadmill. And there's a series of treadmills, conveyor belts that we use to get the material into the wall. And so it's a shot of what that wall section would look like. Because it's not fully earth, we're able to slide in 1-inch thermal barrier, 1-inch insulation. So the walls on this one are 18 inches thick. For Galisteo, we're looking at 2 feet thick for those walls. Here's a shot of rock from the site and the finished Scoria product. So part of using that material was this idea to blend in, which we'll kind of unpack here. Just to move us through quickly how we get there. It's 80 miles from Tucson, and you start in the Sonoran Desert, the low scrub basin with cactus. Very quickly move and start rising in elevation in the highway. Move through these broad expanses of land. The mountains here are in Mexico. So we're looking south. The international border is right about here. And so Casa Caldera, if you can see my mouse, is to the left of the screen. As you drop into that valley, you're sort of in this bowl with mountains all around, rich grasslands, sort of our cattle country. As you move on that road, there's this feeling of slowness and detachment happening. At 80 miles of Tucson, half of that road is highway. And then you get on this manic county road, which is maintained. About an hour and a half in, you turn off that county road, and we're about 2 miles from the site. And that road slowly, it's a forest road, it's not maintained. And it starts moving you back up into the Bajada of the mountains. And as you move up in there, you start getting into the emery oak trees and the manzanitas and the juniper trees. And you start, your whole periphery starts changing. You have this wide expanse, and then now you have this very sort of secluded feeling as you look at the site. As you come up on the property, remember that hill in the site plan. It's right about there that you're maybe like 75 feet from the house, but you still can't see it. You don't have a sense of where it is. It's sort of tucked in there. So if you guys can see there.
So this is the approach with the doors open. And again, it speaks to sort of the owner's desires of this prospect and refuge idea of it. We wanted to have a expansive view, but also not be seen. To itself to sort of camouflaging into the landscape. And this is a house that you can go to and really unplug. You can get cell service, but I think when you're out there, you don't really desire it. And I know when we were living there, coming back to Tucson was actually not so pleasant. You know, the buzz of the city compared to the silence out there that you get to experience. So it's a pretty special experience. Then the view you see now is where that's the San Rafael Valley looking back towards the west. And so this is the lung of the house. As Jesus mentioned earlier, there's no heating or cooling other than wood fire and then cross ventilation. So in a true sense, one minimal requirements for comfort, although it's quite comfortable. And when we moved to these images, Jesus and I built almost everything you see, other than concrete slabs. So we built all the doors, all the windows, built the walls. We hired a roofer to do the final frame, final metal roof. But everything you see, we had time to do. We're also teaching at this time at the local university, University of Arizona. And working on other jobs, but having time and space to think about details. And in a lot of cases, I'd say, like, you know, we would talk about certain details for months before we actually got to building them. And the house runs on 1.5 kilowatts of power, so enough to survive. But you're not running hair dryers or
You could, and the house literally is plug in. We set it up that the owner gets there and he gets his the solar power is a disaster relief solar skid, so it's a small unit that has, you can hook up a generator to it. It's got a battery pack and inverter, and then it has some pigtails off of it, where you basically build a house where it has a 120 plug and plug it into this thing. Now your house is on. But it's sometimes we go out there and we don't even mess with the electrical. We just have it as its space, as a shelter. Because there wasn't any air conditioning and we're still in the desert, it still gets to 100 out here. The walls at 18 inches, they keep this to about 80 to 85 in the really hard summer, where it's over 100 degrees for 10 to 14 days or longer. That wall's thickness absorbs it, and its ability to sort of maintain ambient temperature at 85, which when you don't have air conditioning, I think it's pretty comfortable. But we've also designed it to have air moving over, as Cade was mentioning. So all these panels at the bottom, all open to bring in air, transoms at the door to move air. As many places we could to have operability to open a window and move air across your body.
Yeah. And in the winter, it's sort of reversed, where you go out there and say it's the winter. You have to actually burn wood for about 24 hours before the walls stabilize to a comfortable temperature. And then at that point, you can kind of relax and treat it as more ambient fire situation. But it's a real nice, the owner gets all his wood from his site. He has enough trees to last him probably the rest of his life. Just with picking that they've already fallen. That's that morning light in the winter that Jesus was mentioning. We built all the cabinets again. It's a small cabin, really. That window looks up. The owner's a hunter. He's also a falconer, so he'll capture falcons, train them, and then hunt with them. So these window locations were sort of prospecting. One's looking up at a mountain, the other's looking down the hill. And that one's looking down the hill, where he has a water bowl and a little patio down there. But it's sort of this hunting situation. But the cross ventilation really, the wing is a bedroom wing, where there's this small wood stove that can heat 1,000 square feet. And for privacy, we clad the walls in metal so they'll transfer that heat when needed faster. And then the transoms of the doors also circulate it, the air temperature. It works really well. I'd say this is sort of the smallest sort of comfortable living space. By code, the U.S. requires a bedroom to be, I believe, 72 square feet, and I think we're at 75. So, that's a queen size bed, but it's tight, and the bathroom's tight. But it's a really nice project. So. That's the end. So yeah, we go out there and hang out. Some friends just went out there this weekend, and we thought this one was kind of appropriate. Maybe just sort of what we're going through and what people are going through as we talk about remote and detaching and what's important, and
How do you get the water to the site?
and how our lives will be. I don't know. Other than people are going to start shifting and changing, and in some ways, this owner, this client, he grew up out here, so this was sort of an homage, and it's a place where wild grapes grow. So as a vintner, it made perfect sense for him, and he wanted to treat it like a cabin, and it's a really great experience, and part of that is dealing with the elements on a more fundamental level, and I think it's a little bit like camping. This is a glamping cabin, I guess, but
I think some of the wildlife through living out there, where we come across, there's large cats out there, coyotes. I swear I saw a wolf one night, but maybe it was my imagination or fear. So yeah, falcons and crows. So it's a lively place of wildlife, but it also has this underbelly of sort of traffic that's moving through there. But it's something we're talking about, I guess.
And I think architecturally, just to end on that, or not, but to just make a statement. When we look at these projects in retrospect, as small as it is, being tasked to cool a house and heat a house with no modern technologies, it really puts the architecture and the thinking to the test. And I think that this project would be, a good example of how all of these ideas are still informing our current work. Cross-ventilation, orientation, all these architects do. But really making it part of the foundation of all of our design use as much as we can.
Can we remove a large dependency or need on the fossil fuels or the energy or the resources? Fortunately, our clients have been willing to have those architecturally, and a lot of our projects are case studies in that. How to live in the desert with what is comfortable, and how to maybe give back more than what we're taking.
So I guess we could say, are there any questions? Or,
let's try to start by questions. I like to start to see if anybody would like to raise their hand on any questions. In the meanwhile, I'm gonna being surrounded by nature. It reminds you, like for an architect, it reminds you that architecture is a craft. We have to take time, and being surrounded in big cities, I think we are forgetting. We're forgetting the essence of our job as architects. I know it's different conditions, but I think being surrounded in nature, it reminds you to try to get into more detail and take time to think about what should be the place where we live, how it needs to be, what effects needs to have to you in your daily life where you live. So I think I really like to congratulate you and thank you for taking the time to talk about us, and it really opens our minds, and more for people that lives in big cities. We live in a city of 3 million people, even though it's still a small city, but being in the middle of nature, it's totally different feeling. It's not about population; it's about landscape. So I see that pretty well on every time I see your Instagram, and I see you post lots of images of nature, and it really is a state of mind. It's a state of mind for you guys. So I really encourage you to keep on going toward that direction, because I think you're doing a great job, and if somebody have some questions out there? Let me see if somebody, I don't know.
Thank you, Jorge.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let me see, because I need to, hold on. They're very shy. They can ask it in Spanish if they want. I'll ask them, because sometimes they don't want to speak in English. Yeah, it's a little difficult. Okay.
Hello. Can I make a question?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys for your speak, and congratulations on your work. It's really sensitive to the site. I was curious about knowing. I understand this project, the Casa Caldera, as a like a thermodynamic device. No? So I was curious about the final decision of how do you orient the house, no? Like it was like based on data, or it was more like an empirical thing, like, okay, this is the way we are going to put this box on the site. It was like that?
Yeah, and I think this project was probably one of the harder ones that we've had to try to test out all the things that we felt were important in this, and the view, the approach, some of those architectural notions. But at the end of the day, it came down to how you're going to experience it, live in it, and be comfortable. And in the desert, you have to pay attention to the sun. I think in most of the regions that were akin to northern Mexico and southern US, the sun drives those decisions. And the orientation of this one was really trying to find a sweet spot between being able to invite the sun into the spaces, being able to keep it out, but also being able to open up this very tight bunker-like mechanism to the landscape, to the views.
So I would say that, you know, the easy word is the response. We're responding to elements and client desires and topographic geologic conditions. And so it wasn't that we had an idea to design a house for Zagwan and put it on the site around and ended up there. And so everything was discovered or arrived at. And then retrospectively, we started looking at the history of, you know, the Sonora and Row House and Zagwan's, like after the fact, and almost probably like 2 years after. Like, oh, there it is, the same technique, you know,
The same. We're finding pre-industrial, pre-air conditioning that a lot of the desert responses were similar to the way we're designing. So it was nice to actually see that we're answering age-old problems in similar ways.
Next question we have Jorge Damian. I think he's there.
I'm here. I had a question about the design process that you take with like for the last house you showed us. It was Casa Caldera. You said you made all the doors and furniture, didn't you? Or did I hear? What's like the design process on those things? And like what's the process you make for designing all the building and then trying to like fill it in with your own furniture or your own designs?
You cut out a little bit. The question is, we designed a house and we designed the furniture, and
Well, actually, they're curious about if you physically built all the doors and windows.
we did on this one. Yeah, I did. So we were building the shop. We had a shop at the time, smaller, and for the doors, the moving, you know, that's That's we're not iron workers by trade. My dad was a welder. I grew up on a farm, so a lot of my uncles were contractors. I work construction. So you know a few things, and then you all of a sudden decide to make some doors that are bifolding and they're 9 feet tall and 5 feet wide, and you kind of have to figure some things out. So you mock up and you test, and you know, sometimes cross your fingers, but you know, it was fun. And I'd say probably honestly it was some anxiety, you know, but we had some time.
Where do you enjoy more? Like, because for in that, completing that question, I think he was talking about the design process also. Like,
Yeah.
if you're doing all the physical work and building the windows and the doors and all that, and maybe I don't know if it's a question, but like, how long do you spend on designing it, and then the time of building it, and which areas do you enjoy more, or all, or I don't know.
We probably spend more time thinking about it than we should. We definitely spend more time building it than we should. But I think a lot of that, as I was saying earlier, Cade and I have a lot of conversations. A lot of our process is this. And this specific project, and it's similar with all the other projects, we try to place ourselves on site as much as possible. So if we're not the builder, we still try to be there every day. If we are the builder, we're there for extended periods of time of the day. And so since we were building this one, we were really, really interconnected with it. And so we know the plan, we know the section. And Cade always tells this story that we're building the walls. Yeah, we're building the walls, the masonry walls, and we're zag-along space might open up. So a lot of that is being out there and experiencing light conditions, spatial conditions, proportions, putting our physical body in that space. And then it starts with the idea. So then that idea works between conversation, drawing, sketch, sometimes formal in the computer, sometimes quickly on whatever we have on the site. But we have to start it, and then it evolves. And it evolves through us putting our hands on it and trying to solve the problems. So those bifolding doors actually meant to also be functional as solar devices. So if there's sun or wind that you don't want, you manipulate those doors in multiple ways to have sort of maximum opportunity.
Yeah, it controls airflow too. But I would say also, as the process goes, like we got our permit, and it was, you know, a thin set. So not all of the details were figured out because we're builders. We don't have to do that. We have every line drawn, at least so there's a price, and maybe that continues without a change order cost. But more often than not, you have to draw more when you're working with another contractor. For us, we take the liberty of saying, we're building it, we have time. So the building extends our leverage on details. So we know that things change, and when you're out there, you see opportunities. But I would say, you know, as far as say the windows and doors, we had a placeholder in the drawing set that we submitted to the jurisdictions for permitting. And then, you know, when it came time to actually build them, they were redrawn, and they were redrawn in the computer, and then they were drawn on paper, and then they were sketched on the wall, and
then sketched out with physical material.
Yeah, and then it just sort of evolves. So it's not, here's my drawing, that's perfect, I'm going to go down and now weld it all together. Like, that's not really how it works. And
yeah, that's the process. Yeah, that's the process. The master builder. Okay, so another question we have on I think they're asking on Facebook. They is some of their projects are available through Airbnb. That's one of the questions. Because maybe people like to enjoy that. That's one. Another one is They want to know about the chairs on the back. If they want to know if it's your design, which we're pretty sure it is, and they want to know about that chair. They want to see it.
I'm gonna jump. I'll jump on the Airbnb one. We are currently in conversations with Casa Caldera, the owner, to try to get that in an Airbnb situation so that more people can enjoy it. Part of that is a practical thing of actually just gaining some income to keep up maintenance costs. That way, no one has to go out there and stay. So we're moving that. That's part of the conversation. But with respect to that client, I don't foresee that happening anytime soon, but a definite possibility. And we're hoping that that is the case. With Joshua Tree, part of that premise was definitely an Airbnb. So we hopefully will get that built. With Galisteo, New Mexico, the same. We're having these conversations with clients. One, personally, selfishly, I want to be able to stay there. To have everyone else also be able to enjoy it. So take this concept of private residential. Most of these are custom homes, so Airbnb offers that secondary passive income, and so a lot of our clients are coming aware of this and part of their plan, but we have yet to execute it.
And the Joshua Tree project, we didn't show you much, but that the client lives in Australia and LA, but he specifically wants that as a vacation home for his family. But when they're not around, he wants Airbnb. So I think it changes the program a little bit when it's not planned on for, say, a resale of a normal home. Like the closets can be smaller, like a hotel, or there's subtle differences in requirements, I guess. Maybe there's a lockable, storage for all the personal belongings. So that sort of Airbnb idea has changed a little bit of the way some clients or owners think about how they plan their home. So that's part of many of these, like Galisteo, for instance, and Joshua Tree.
Yeah, it's like certain things that happens.
We're working on it.
Certain things that happens in the world, like when Airbnb started, like lots of people are being calling architects to try to do as a retreat homes with the business program involved, and also like right now that we're living through this working from home situation with this COVID-19. What do you think it's gonna change in architecture? Because we are definitely spending time with our families. We are changing the way we see things, even what really is important for us in the way we live, in the way we communicate with people. What do you think is gonna, I know it's very fast to know. It's just been several weeks, like 2-3 weeks that we've been like this. But do you think it's gonna affect in something in architecture in the near future or in the future?
For me, more so, I'm adapt humans, because I believe what we're doing actually reflects culture, right? And so these things that we're talking about today and some of the comments you were making, Jorge, about slowing down and being more aware and connecting with nature and the outdoors, and that has its varying degrees depending where you're at, if you're in a city or you're in a smaller city or a metropolis. But either way, wherever any civilization is, there is some natural reason it is there, whether a mountain or a river or an ocean. Then the layer of economy comes in. So I'm more curious of how do we as humans slow down, be more communal. I know that seems contradictory with social distancing, but does it just change our perspective and how we see our daily lives and how we operate and treat other human beings, and what things do we take as inspiration in everyday life, you know?
Yeah.
Being at home more, I noticed certain things more about lifestyle that, oh, I need to tweak this, or I need to tweak that, you know? Make it more comfortable.
Yeah. And we have one more question, but you forgot to show us the chair that they want to see you talk a little bit.
That chair is going to San Diego to a woman named Athena. But we have several chairs in the studio that, you know, this is just another knob we turn. It's why we have our office and shop connected. It's basically we test ideas. This is our conference room. This is our you know, sort of our testing grounds. There's chairs everywhere. There's a lot of failures. You know, sometimes it bustles more than others. And last year, I think there was a time we had 6 chairs being built, or 8, and it was full. And it's just a thing that when we were in architecture school, we started making. And I would say I started making when I was probably 5. And whether that was a ceramics class or an art class or something, that was always important. And I think that's why we build. But these things for us, it's like fast food, you know. We can design something and build it, and you don't have to wait on the client. And then the fact that we get to sell them on occasion, it's just sort of a bright byproduct of explorations. And so, yeah, I don't know what specifically you want to know about that chair, or
How much is it?
How much is it? No, we have 2 more.
Depends.
Depends on who. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna have 2 more questions. Okay. Let's give Valeria Garcia. She wants to ask a question. I don't know if she's there. Still there?
Hi, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Well, thank you for taking my question. I really enjoy how you basically display your life on site. So that for me was such a unifying moment in your whole presentation. And I want to ask you, any messages for new architects or young architects? And the second question would be, if you ever would like to collaborate with people from Mexico, what are your views on the young architects that are coming from Mexico?
Can you repeat the first question? It was cutting out on our end.
Yeah. So my first question is, any messages for new architects in Mexico? What are your sort of new views in things that are happening now in the world, and what are positive messages that you could send to young architects? And then the second one, are you thinking on doing any collaborations from young architects all over the world or in Mexico?
Yeah, the second one's easier to answer.
Yeah,
yes, we would love to collaborate out of our bubble here. And are always looking at opportunities. We're open to that.
We've actually been to Mexico twice for potential projects, and it just hasn't, you know, come to realization. If there's ever an opportunity, we'd love to. You guys in Mexico are doing amazing work. There's so many talented architects right now. I'd say it's a point of inspiration to look at the body of work coming out of Mexico across all the states. It's impressive, and it's a fun place that we love to visit as well. I mean, you know, to work there seems natural, and I hope someday it happens. We'll see.
Your first question is harder. And so let me try to reframe it. What are we seeing in the current state of the world now that we could give advice to young architects? Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Whoa, that's a hard one.
I'd say, we started our business in 2007, and it was a financial crisis, and it wasn't easy. And now we're at this other weird thing that we don't know because we're at the front of it. I'd also say that we're in a place, as Jorge mentioned, like this is considered maybe a smaller city, yet we still find opportunities. And I think that we can easily find inspiration or discouragement equally in the world. And we'll often find people that will, for whatever reason, say that's not possible or you shouldn't pursue that. And I would say that for some people that comes from competitors or family or just a different perspective. But I would say architecture is vast in opportunity and skill, and there's a place for so many different kinds of people in this business. So really is, and it's probably harder than it is to say, but if you can really hone in on who you are and what you find important and interested in, if you focus on those things, and if it's related to your passion in architecture, you will find a place. And a friend has mentioned before, he said, just keep doing your work and it will find its audience. And that's our friend out. It was advice from one of his mentors. For us, it's this place that we are part of, that's inspiring. And for some people, maybe this place doesn't make sense, for a myriad of reasons. But for us, it's a fit,
I think part of that place too is in looking at the landscape and looking what exists there. And Cade and I always talk about how the plants survive in the use and consumption or conservation of resources, right? What a nopal needs in the summertime where it gets really skinny, or when it rains and it gets really fat, and trying to actually maximize those opportunities. I think for me, there's an agency that architecture are able to maybe convey. The work of Jeff yesterday, to be able to actually affect in a positive spatial way public space by becoming the developer, by becoming, like in our case, the builder, the contractor, in Jeff's case, sometimes as well. And I maybe lump that into taking that power for ourselves as an architectural community, and finding ways to do that. And I think it's the recession that Cade was talking about in 2008 that sort of pushed us to be creative in how we can do that. And so we started making more chairs. We started utilizing our skills as craftsmen, builders, and we became builders of our own work. Natural progression then is we become developers of our own work and ideas. And I think as the landscape is changing socially, politically, economically, there's still a conversation can guide client society to make better decisions about how we treat other people, how we utilize our resources, maybe how to live more harmoniously with our environment, either built or natural. So I think find ways to
the architectural education is when you get done, I think most people know how to solve problems in a very unique way. And I think that's a skill that it transcends architecture. And so if there's a challenge, which you may see on the horizon, I think that you know, you'll find yourself equipped to solve problems in various ways.
I have another question from Renato Ramirez. He's asking, he's curious about the relationship between your projects and the rain, the outside exposure, the time passing by to your, and he's asking also, do you collect water for reuse? And what kind of low maintenance solutions like additives do you apply to your building systems, like for ramp earth or, so that's a, yeah, that's the last question.
At the Tucson Mount Retreat, so in Tucson, the rammed earth it's stabilized with some cement, not the 100% pure earth material. The rain's not an issue on any of the buildings. We do collect it on every building, whether it's passive collection or storage collection. So passive, we deliver it to detention basins, usually to help shade the buildings and grow vegetation and eventually cool the buildings, whether shade or evapotranspiration. At the Tucson Mountain Retreat, we collect 30,000 gallons of rainwater, and it's used for the complete living plumbing system. So that's the water they use quite a lot, and it was full before we finished construction. But it does go through filtration, and you know, it has to be maintained. And it's not, it does cost more, so it's not an accessible thing to drink rainwater for most people. But yeah, that's just part of probably every project we'll do. You know, that's just a responsibility that I think that all architects should think about. You know.
Of course.
How can what we're implementing in that natural or built environment give back? I mean, it's sort of that premise of, you know, as we're taking, what can we give back? They're one for one. So we think about those, especially here in the desert, of how do we divert the water? How do we collect it? How do we slow it down? How can we just even passively use it to grow more plants for shade or even for visual enjoyment?
Okay. Okay, I think we run out of time. I think we can close by I'd like to say that first of all, thank you for taking the time to talk to our students at Escuela Libre Arquitectura. I can perceive the sense of calm on you guys. Like we had a dinner like
Thank you for having us.
a month ago.
Thank you for everyone. Thank you for having us. Thank you for, you know, this is great.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I like the way you say when they ask you about how long it takes you to for the, well, I think I asked that question on the design process, but that you said you'd like to talk a lot the designs before, like that's the most time that you spend, and it's like in the slow food movement, no, like for that you take time to think about it, digest the idea. And also take time on building it, because the craft it needs to be done right. So because in that process you have the option of changing your mind also, because architecture it needs to be a feeling of something. It cannot be just drawn or in a computer. You need to feel it. So you have that chance of changing the course of the design during the construction process. And I like about that what you're doing. And so I'd like to congratulate you for your work and thank you for taking the time again. Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks.